Hi, welcome to Two Guys Talk Paranormal. My name's Gareth.
And I'm Jamie.
And today we're going to be talking about ghostly railways, where every journey into Britain's railway runs parallel to something darker.
Yep, from phantom trains to vanishing signalmen and whispering tunnels, these tracks hold more than rust and memories.
So, first up, Conington North Signal Box, the man in the window. Let's start in Cambridgeshire, a place called Conington North, a small remote signal box that's been long forgotten, except by those who've seen something they can't explain.
Back in the 1950s, a signalman named Arthur was on the night shift. Around 3 a.m, he looked out of his box and saw a man standing in the opposite signal cabin.
The man was in full uniform, watching him, silent, still.
Arthur waved. The man didn't move, he just stared.
And then he vanished. No footsteps, no door, just gone.
Arthur later learned that no one was scheduled to be in that box, but years earlier a man had died there, alone, during a shift.
Today, some railway workers still report hearing boots crunching on gravel or the sound of levers being pulled in the dark when they're completely alone. It's quite creepy.
It is, isn't it? And it's worth saying for, people might be watching this from the other world, so we're one of the first countries, probably the first country to build a railway network. Started in the 19th century, so a lot of the infrastructure and buildings on it are like hundreds of years old.
Yeah.
You can imagine in that amount of time there's been quite a lot of tragedy and disasters, especially in the early years.
Yeah. It said it's a lonely signal box, but if people are hearing crunching and levers, that means the signal box is surely still used.
Yeah, well, I think some are still used today. They're changing it now. A lot of it's all remotely done and electronic, but in the past, all the signals were operated mechanically, so you'd have people stationed in signal boxes at certain intervals in the line.
Yeah. We had them at Hand and Park for ages, didn't we? Where we live.
So you'd have, if there was a level crossing, you'd have somebody there to open the gates and change the signals and things. And I think it's quite an isolated job. You'd be spending a lot of time by yourself at night as well.
I wonder how he died. It doesn't actually say in the tale how he died.
It doesn't, does it? I mean, he could have been hit by a train or anything.
Yeah. Interesting one, that one.
It could just be, though, it could just be there was somebody in there. If it wasn't recorded properly, and he was.
Yeah, well, yeah, there is that. And people hear stuff. When you're on your own, you will hear stuff.
100%. I used to do a lot of work on the railway, and obviously doing engineering, you don't want the trains running, so we do it at night.
Yeah.
And it could be quite spooky sometimes. You could be by yourself, like in a deep cut or in a tunnel, and it's pitch dark, and your hearing's a bit more sensitive then when you can't really see anything apart from what your head torch picks out. So it did get quite spooky sometimes. You'd probably hear animals walking around and different things you wouldn't notice in the day.
Yeah. Interesting. Let's move on to our next one then, shall we?
Yeah, so the Phantom Train of Derby, the Rolls-Royce host. So Derby is known for its railway history. There's one train you'll never see, even though people hear it all the time.
Near the old Rolls-Royce halt, locals speak of a phantom express that glides along a disused track, lights flickering through the trees, and the distant sound of wheels on rails that no longer exist.
One former worker claimed he sat in his car on a break when the sound of a train rushed through him. Cold air, dead radio, then nothing.
And no train had run there in decades.
Now, that's an interesting story. Well, it's interesting to hear about because we're sort of in the Eastbourne area at the minute, and there used to be a railway line which went from Holgate to, I think, Erridge.
Erridge, yeah.
Which is closed now. It's a bicycle trail. It's the Cuckoo Trail line. It's closed, and it's been closed for 50, 60 years. But I've heard local reports of people saying they could hear like a train going along the track where it is
really?
now, even though it's been closed for decades. There's quite a lot of abandoned stations along there. I think the one in Headland is still a house, isn't it?
Yeah, and then you've got Heathfield Station still there.
Yeah, the tunnel. You used to be able to walk through the tunnel after the station, but it's closed now, isn't it?
Yeah, I've never been able to. I've ridden it a couple of times and I've walked it a few times up to Crowborough as far as I've gone. But yeah, so I'm guessing this is a similar thing. The train's no longer there.
Which goes back to, we've talked about it before, haven't we, how a lot of, there's a theory behind the ghost sightings that it's almost like a recording in the landscape, isn't it?
Yeah, they call it stone theory. So yeah, it's just it's not you're just watching it's residual.
Yeah, you're watching a replay of something that happened in the past.
Yeah. Or you're hearing it in this case.
Yeah, even though some people said along that Cuckoo Trail they've even heard like train whistles. things like that in the distance. Yeah, I've heard quite a few stories about like that.
Oh wow! I wouldn't want to walk up there at night.
No, that's not because of the ghost. That's because of the feral youth that
Yeah.
runs around. You probably like to get stabbed or robbed.
Yeah. Oh, have we got another one?
We have. So Severn Valley Railway, Bridge North Shadow.
Oh.
So the Severn Valley Railway is one of the UK's most loved heritage lines. I think it's also one of the longest in the UK as well.
All right.
So for people who don't know, heritage lines it's a disused rail which has been opened by people who like trains, and it sort of runs old trains, and the station's sort of made up to look like period.
So they're all volunteers normally, aren't they?
They're all volunteers now.
So they're helped, so they rebuilt the steam trains and stuff like that, and then they run them, and you pay to go on them, and that's what keeps them going.
Yeah, it's like a charity. Like the stations might be painted as if it was the 20s on one of them and the 50s on another.
Old signs up. Yeah, so.
So what happened at Bridge North Station then?
At Bridge North Station, multiple volunteers have seen a man in a long coat pacing the far end of the platform.
He never speaks, he never moves when approached, he just simply vanishes.
Some think he's a former station master. Others whisper he's a soldier waiting for the train that never came.
And there's footage of movement when the station is locked and unexplained voices caught late at night.
Well, that'd be a good one to go to at night and do an investigation.
That reminds me as well, I think it was one of the castles in London. They said they caught security footage of something like bursting through the doors.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I think it was it Hampton Court Palace, I think it was.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and there was rumours that a lot of people said it was fake, but there were rumours that it was real.
Oh. That's kind of similar to the Lavender Line. The person seen at the end of the platform and then just disappears. So in this case, it's a lady, they believe, who committed suicide after her boyfriend or husband didn't return from World War One.
So what have people seen on that?
Just a lady in white stood at the end of the platform.
Does she sort of do anything, or
just disappears? She just stood there 1 minute and gone the next.
Yeah, so you're just looking into the distance, you see this figure there, and
yeah, and then she's suddenly not there anymore. And I don't think this is at night. This has been in the daytime, because that's what one of these heritage lines. So it's not always open. So I guess the witnesses would have been the people who work there. But unfortunately, we haven't.
So what she's just seen, sort of wearing old-fashioned clothing, that sort of thing.
Yeah, well, yeah. All I've heard is that she's dressed in white, but like a white flowy dress.
And this is actually, again, this is somewhere that's local to us. And we've been trying to
go on there and investigate.
Yeah, I haven't been able to sort of get there, which is a shame, isn't it? Because it'd be a really good one to look into.
It would. Especially as the guy I first spoke to had never heard of anything, and then got back to us after speaking to a couple of people, and it seems that it is a true story, and the people have experienced something there, but they don't want us to go there and irate the spirit because they've had some.
That's right. Yeah, you said in the email that there'd been a bad atmosphere since they'd come there.
Since it's calmed down now, and they didn't want to start it up again, which is fair enough. But hopefully that's not what we wanted to do. So hopefully that they'll let us on at some point to get some more answers. But yeah, I think she's supposed to be seen also walking up the road towards it as well. So she lived in the nearby village. And then,
so actually Ifield, isn't it? That's where that's based.
Yeah, so she would have.
So actually people in the village have seen it as well.
She walked up the country lane to get to where the station is, and then she's seen on the station. So that's what they think she did. Obviously, after hearing the bad news of something happening to her partner, she went out there and committed suicide, and now.
I mean, that's got to be one of the most common ghost sightings in this country, isn't it? Things like that.
Lady in white. I think it's most common in most of the world. There seems to be a lady in white everywhere. But I also see that can be seen as an omen to death.
Can it?
If you see a lady in white, yeah, I'm sure I read that.
What's your own death?
Yeah.
What's a death in the family?
I don't know really. Could be a death in the family because obviously we wouldn't know about it if it was that person died because they didn't be able to tell people. So
isn't that the same? I hear the same about. Isn't there? You know, going back to a subject we covered earlier, cryptids. And isn't there a black dog appearing supposed to signify death? I'm sure I've heard a similar story.
Yeah, I've heard that story as well. Yeah. Yeah, dark. Yeah,
I'm sure people said that about the Beast of Bodmin Moor, wasn't it?
Yeah, which I read a story recently that was actually a panther that escaped in something. Like someone actually had evidence.
Although it was a real.
There was a real big cat an ABC that had escaped or was released, and they actually had evidence that they were going to release.
Well, that'd probably be a good subject for a future podcast.
ABCs.
We'll keep that back now. Beast of Bodmin Moor.
Oh yeah, because that was going on for years.
Yeah, no, it's one of the most famous cryptids.
I remember them finding a skull once in a bog on Bodmin, and they thought it was obviously the skull of the beast, but I don't remember actually finding out what it was because there was pictures of it. It had fangs and everything like that. It looked like a cat skull. I don't ever remember what they actually said it was in the end, or if they even released it. Okay, now let's head underground to one of the most famously haunted stations in London, Aldwych.
Closed since 1994, Aldwych is often used for filming, but actors and crew have reported something else there.
Oh. A woman in an Edwardian dress, pale, silent, wandering the platform, disappearing through walls.
Late night rehearsals have been interrupted by crying in the tunnels, cold air that moves against the wind, and lights flickering violently.
Even the engineers avoid certain maintenance shafts. One man quit mid-shift claiming he felt someone breathing down his neck. Oh, that's scary.
It is, and and again, the London Underground is a really old system, historic.
Oh yeah, and there's loads of lines that aren't used anymore, isn't there? Or loads of stations. You've worked on the Underground, doing your job, haven't you?
I have, yeah. Most of it's actually above ground, which is something that people don't know.
But there is tracks underground.
Yeah. It's only the central part under Central which is underground. The majority of it's actually above ground.
So but is there tracks that are there that we no longer know of?
Yeah, there are bits. Even the stations, they've got loads of closed off passageways.
Right.
And I've done work in some where you've actually. So if you've ever been to the Underground, you know the walls have got panelling. I've done jobs before where the panelling's been removed and you've gone inside the wall into like a room behind to do something. So.
All right. That's crazy. I'd like to go to the Underground and do. I know they do tours and everything down there, but I wonder if you could go in that Aldwych one. I wonder if anyone's actually done a paranormal investigation in the Underground. Is there sections that they could actually close off and you'd be safe down there without?
Yeah, there's plenty of sections which are abandoned. And there's quite a few. I don't know if it's just Aldwych, probably the most famous abandoned stations, but there's a hell of a lot.
I wonder well, I suppose you'd have to speak to the transport people, wouldn't you? They'd probably only let you on there if it was like a TV program like Most Haunted or something like that.
Yeah, I'm sure the fees to do that would be well out of our price range, unfortunately.
Really? You were talking earlier about doing a podcast on horror movies.
Yes.
Have you seen the horror movie that was in the Underground called...
Was that Creep?
Creep.
I have, yeah, it was really good.
So I'm guessing most of that would have been filmed in abandoned stations and stuff like that. 'Cause that's what it's supposed to be, isn't it? She ends up in finds an abandoned station where this creep is living. Yeah, that was a good film. There's another film called Creep.
I was just going to say, there is another one, which was completely different.
So this one is about...
This was in 2004, Creep came out, wasn't it?
And it was about a guy living underground, but he was kind of a mutant, wasn't he?
He was, yeah.
And I think the other Creep is more about a creepy sort of guy.
I'm sure I've got a dusty DVD somewhere of that.
Of Creep.
Actually, I think you bought it for me for my birthday.
I may have done, because it was a good film and probably deserved to be seen. I think I had a poster of it once on my wall.
Low budget, wasn't it?
It was quite low budget, but then thinking that they'd probably done it in London, it probably wasn't as low as you think it would have been, paying for all that. Some good behind the scenes bits in there as well with the makeup and everything they put on the guy. But yeah, that was interesting. It was a good film.
Another thing I wanted to talk about on this subject was obviously there's been quite a few accidents in the time of British Railways. And in the modern day, there's been quite a lot of reports of like people hearing things at the sites after it's happened. Yeah,
well, we've got quite a famous one here, Clayton Tunnel.
Yes, near Brighton.
Near Brighton, which I always wanted to go and investigate, because apparently if you stand around near there, just outside Burgess Hill, isn't it? If you stand near there, you're supposed to hear the cries of someone coming out of the tunnel.
Yes, I think this was in the 19th century, a train. This was before they even had mechanical signalling. So I think they used to time intervals between it.
All right.
So a train would pass and the signal would run a stopwatch. And they'd have to keep, say, 3 minutes between trains or whatever.
Yeah.
But the train ahead had a mechanical fault and stopped inside the tunnel.
Oh.
And the signalman didn't realise that happened and waved the next train through, and it ploughed into the back of the wreckage. And back then it was all gas lamps.
So he was timing, thought, well, it'd be clear by now, sent the next train through, and it hadn't actually come out the other side.
Yeah, it had broken down in the tunnel, was stationary, and it ran into the back of it. And obviously back then all the carriages were made out of wood and gaslit, so the whole thing like turned into matchsticks and caught fire.
So is that tunnel still open though?
Yeah, it's still used today.
Should we still go through it on a train from Brighton to London, would you?
Yeah, exactly. If you're going north from Brighton, you'll pass through Clayton Tunnel.
Wow.
I've also heard another one as well, which was in St John's Wood in London. Again, a train ran through a red signal. This is in the late 50s, I think 1958. Ran through a red signal, and it hit again a train ahead of it. But the locomotive of the train which crashed went into a bridge parapet, and the bridge collapsed onto the train. and crushed a number of carriages, and I think quite a few people, 50 people died.
Oh
And
wow.
people have always said that the bridge is still there, it's been repaired. But if you go there, you can still hear the cries of on certain nights, you can still hear the cries of the injured.
Oh
Even though
wow.
there's nothing happened, and people have actually called the police about this to say, "Oh, we think somebody's in trouble," and they've had reports back. So it was like, "No, there's no one there."
Oh wow, that's scary, isn't it? Wow. Interesting.
Yeah, I used to have a book which I think my dad gave to me, which was about railway ghosts. So I get a lot of these stories I know from there.
Right, and you like trains?
I do, yeah. I'm not ashamed to admit that.
Yeah. And your dad used to work on the railway,
He did, yeah. He had his own ghost experience at High Wycombe station as well.
Oh.
Yeah, he said he was sat at the station at night time, going to get the last train home, and he was sat on the platform, and he could hear footsteps in the ballast in front. And when he went to look, there was nobody there.
What's
So
the ballast?
The ballast is what the track sits on. Like
Oh, okay, all the
sort
gravelly. So
exactly,
so it
yeah.
sounded like someone walking on the
Yeah,
gravel.
so he could hear somebody walking in it, but there was no one actually there.
Oh. And that would have been an engineer, presumably, if someone was working on that.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So there's loads of different stories like that.
Wow.
I remember reading about another one where a train stopped in the tunnel and somebody on there looked out the window and he could see a worker wearing Victorian clothing, carrying like a gas lamp, who looked really shocked.
Yes, you told me that, didn't he? He looked shocked because he could see him, kind of thing. So he was looking at a modern guy. So was the Victorian thinking he's looking into the future?
Is there somebody somewhere in the depths of history, a story about this Victorian railway worker who saw some spectral train with like weird looking people on it wearing funny clothes?
So that's like brings in the theory, I guess, that ghosts aren't past people dying, or not. They're especially if they're.
Is there a theory then about how almost timelines can cross?
Well, there must be. This is a string
Almost
theory,
like-
isn't there?
I don't know.
So we run parallel. The multiverse, in theory, there's loads and loads of timelines. So us sitting here now, there would have been an option where we decided not to meet up because where we was going to record, we couldn't. So we would have been like, "Oh, scrap it, we'll do it another time."
It's almost like every time you make a decision, you actually like branch.
Create another timeline. But but I suppose string theory is like, so we're running along here. There's another line running alongside us, and every so often.
They can sort of interact.
They cross over. So us seeing ghosts or hearing ghosts,
we're actually looking into another timeline.
Yeah, but it could be future, it could be past, because they could be in it could be a completely different time. It might not be the same year. So seeing someone in Victorian clothes just means that we've crossed over.
Yeah, it might not be our Victorian era, but like an alternate one, slightly different.
Was you there? We were doing an investigation, and we had the spirit talker on doing its bit, and it kept coming up. But what it was saying was really weird, because it was saying they're spirits, they're ghosts, and it kind of made it feel like someone was telling us that we were ghosts.
Oh, as if they were. No, I was there.
So it wasn't like they were saying they were ghosts. It was like he was trying to tell us that we were the ghosts.
Yeah, like they were listening to what we were saying.
Yeah, because they were like, what are they doing? Why are they saying that they're ghosts? As if someone else was in that building, but in a different place, and they could hear us talking, but we couldn't see each other. And we were thinking they were ghosts, and they were thinking we were ghosts. So that would be string theory, I think. Unless I'm wrong. If I am wrong, you can leave a comment and say, no, actually, it's this dipshit.
But no, it's an interesting thing to think about, isn't it?
Yeah, maybe they're not spirits. Maybe they are just timelines crashing into each other every so often. But then you've also got... But that would imply that that's when you think you're having a clever interaction with something. Its responses are to your questions, yes, no. And they call that something, I can't remember what they call it.
I think I know what you mean. Like you're actually talking to an entity.
Yeah.
Not listening to like we were saying earlier, like a recording.
Like a recording, yeah. So recording would be couldn't be timelines crossing. That would be a recording. Whereas if you're talking to a real person, or not a real person, but what you believe to be a spirit, and it's actually answering you not properly, but that could be just another timeline.
So we're not saying there's one type of ghost. It's like there's multiple different kinds of these things, isn't there? Sometimes it is the real spirit of somebody who's still here for whatever reason. Sometimes, like you say, you're just watching a recording of an event which has happened.
Yeah. So you got stone.
That's why you get like.
I think stone theory may be more to do with voices and stuff like that. So we're like in the tunnels when they hear people crawling out. That would be stone theory.
Yeah, and going back to the subject of this podcast again, there's been loads of when the Victorian navvies built the tunnels. it was dangerous work, and lots of them died doing it. And again, there's been so many stories in tunnels of people seeing things or hearing voices and that sort of thing. So yeah, that would match in with that, wouldn't it?
Yeah. I guess, but then I guess all around the world it's like that, isn't it? You think in America when they built their train lines, how many people probably died doing that?
Well, I think they used a lot of Chinese labour, didn't they?
Yeah, they did.
Quite famous when they were building. What was it, Santa Fe out west?
But but they would, they'd be blowing through mountains and stuff like that, wouldn't they, to make
Using
tunnels?
dynamite, yeah.
Yeah, and loads of people would die. So I'm sure there's probably loads of ghost stories with railway lines over in America. We're obviously just covering the UK ones. Maybe we can do another country next time.
What would be really good is to do the ghost of Route 66.
Oh yeah, because we've actually driven it.
We have it 13 years ago. We drove the entire length of Route 66, and I'm sure there's a lot of stories along there.
Yeah, I wish we can't. Well, wasn't.
We weren't doing that then, but it was a lot of abandoned buildings, weren't there?
Yeah, we probably could have got some good footage then. We probably stayed in some creepy hotels as well, where we might have got some stuff.
I think maybe for a future investigation, maybe we could do a sort of railway themed one.
Yeah, well,
I was thinking before that St John's Wood I mentioned earlier, that might be a good one to...
Where's St John's Wood?
It's in London.
How would you get there then?
I don't know, I guess we'd have to drive up.
What, park somewhere and then walk to it?
Yeah, and then sort of...
I wonder, there was a group years ago called Elementals, they were called, and they're on YouTube, and they went to an abandoned railway, and they kind of video went across the fence line to get in there. It's the only way they could get in there. I'm guessing it was all boarded off. And then they got in there, and there was like pentagrams where they said people had been devil worshipping, and then they had their recorders and everything like that, and actually got some creepy evidence. I don't remember what station that was.
It'll be good if you can find out, because maybe we could do something there as well.
Yeah, it was quite. Yeah, they had to sneak in there. It was like an urban exploring episode, but they were paranormal. They also been in Pevensey Castle as well. When they used to be able to sneak in there.
Well, there's lots of urban exploring and paranormal stuff. There's a lot of crossover between that as well.
I think when you go into these abandoned houses and everything like that, people hear stuff.
Yeah, I've seen some interesting videos on YouTube where people have caught figures moving upstairs in abandoned houses and that sort of thing. We got a few round here. Again, a future episode we can do, can't we?
Yeah. Right, so we leave that one. So, if anyone's got any more stories of the railway ghosts, so we'd love to hear them. One, you're a big fan of trains, but
yes, any excuse to go do that would be
yeah.
appreciated. So we'll give you our closing thoughts on this. So the ghosts of Britain's railways are more than stories. They're echoes of people, of tragedy, and of time that never quite left the tracks.
From the forgotten halts to the busy tube lines, the railways are alive in more ways than one.
And if you've ever felt a chill on a lonely platform, or heard a train that shouldn't be there, maybe you've crossed paths with one of them.
Thanks for riding with us. Subscribe, share if you can. It helps us grow on this, and then it would hopefully help us grow on the whole platform where we do videos and everything else. But thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Stay creepy.